Okay, we're going to get started again. Seems like it rolls around pretty quick. This lesson's going to be for April the 30th. On our schedule, course schedule, second term, it doesn't say anything about April the 30th. It starts at May the 7th. You might have got confused looking at that, but we're going to add April the 30th in there, and this time we're just going to pick a subject, and I've picked ladder diagrams, and we're going to do a lot of ladder diagrams and getting used to troubleshooting and motor controls. This is a multi-start and stop station. If you already know how to do this, maybe you'll pick up on something that the terminology or the way they go about doing it to know how to write the ladder. Hopefully you'll learn something by it, and then we'll move into a little more complicated ladder logic. But hope everyone's registered and for the summer classes through the school. Susan said she would help you. I hope you all have done that, and if not, you need to get in touch with her and take care of that. I hope you've done that this week. So I'm going to get started on a multiple start and stop station ladder diagram, and the guy does a good job. Short video, and we'll get started.
We have a stop start station at one end of the conveyor, and we've got another stop start station at the other end of the conveyor. Then how do we do our ladder diagram for that? Well, first of all, we need to have our rungs here. So we'll throw in our power rungs. I'm going to arbitrarily choose this as line 1. I'm going to make this my neutral, and my supply voltage is going to be 120 volts AC. But again, remember your supply controls could be 2.8, they could be 120, they could be 24 volts. All depends on what voltage you're coming off, and if you're using a controlled transformer as well. So let's start off with our starts first. We're going to start with this guy. I'm going to arbitrarily label this guy A and this guy B. So here we need to start with our first stop push button. So I'm going to draw this guy in. I'm going to drop in my first stop push button, and I'm going to label that guy stop A. Excellent. Okay. In series with that, I'm going to drop in my next stop push button. So your stops are in series. Label that guy stop B. That corresponds to this bad boy right here. Okay. So those guys have to be in series so that if we break the current on either one of those, it's going to drop out our coil. And then we need to provide our normally open start push buttons. So I'm going to make this guy my first start push button. That corresponds to this guy. Then in parallel with that, I'm going to drop in my next start push button. I'm going to label that guy start B. That corresponds to that push button right there. Now we've got all of our push buttons. Those guys are going to go to our coil for our contactor. And then we'll throw our overload in behind here so that if we have an overload state, it will also stop the current flowing to our motor coil. Excellent. Now, so far, we still have a 2-wire control here. We need to provide 3-wire control or a holding contact here. So we'll drop another holding contact below here. And then we're going to correspond that holding contact with this motor contactor. So this normally open contact is physically on this contactor.
This contact is going to be on the motor starter.
Beautiful. We can throw in our rung numbers here.
Once you push the start button, it seals in.
And 3 corresponding to 1.
And then you got to open it up right
3
here.
3 rungs on our ladder here. And then here we can say that this contactor has a normally open contact on rung number 3. Okay? Totally obvious on this guy, but if you had a much larger motor control ladder diagram, then you could quickly correspond to the rung number with that contactor. Okay, let's throw in our wire numbers. We're going to do 1 here. We're going to use 2 as our return. This is going to be 3, 3. Anytime we go through a component, we now increase to the next number. These are all the same piece of wire, so these are all number 4. Okay, go across. I got number 5, 5, and 5. That's the same piece of wire over here. And don't forget this jumper right here. This is wire number 6. Excellent. All right, guys. So that's our stop-start station for multiple stop-starts. Let's see how we physically wire this on the next page. All right, guys. Now take a look at this diagram. It looks like there is no neutral available, so we'll switch it up here. So what we'll do is we'll make this guy line 1 and this guy line 2. So that'll be our controls.
What he's talking about is
meaning
not
that going
to be 120 volt control.
Contactor right here, or this guy right here,
going to be
is going to be
208
good for 208 volts AC.
each one of your phases.
So let's start off with our stop switches first, right? So if we're taking a look here, we're going to go from line 1 and we're going to go over to our first stop switch. So we're going to pick up this guy right here. So I'm going to take line 1. I'm going to bring that guy out. And I'm going to come over like this and over to my first stop switch right here.
This is how you'd wire it if you were out in the field. That's why I like this illustration.
Beautiful.
It shows
So you can see that I've come in on the left-hand side of my diagram here.
And it's showing you what to do off that starter
as well, so that everything matches as much as possible. May help a little bit when it comes to troubleshooting, so that you know that coming in on the left is your incoming wire, and then going out on the right is going to be your outgoing wire. Okay, from there, it looks like I've got this wire that goes from my stop and goes in series with my other stop. Excellent. Okay, then from the stop, I'm going to go over to my start. So I'm going to label this guy as A, this guy is B, this guy is A, this guy is B, and that's going to correspond with this being A and this being B. So we've picked up our 2 stop switches there. Now we're going to pick up a start. On this diagram, it says that it goes to the start A first, right? Well, that would mean that I have to have a wire going over there all the way over to A. So why don't I start off just with this little jumper? Because I also have to pick up start B, right? So I'm coming out of the right-hand side of the stop. I'm going into the left-hand side of my start. That means that I've picked up this guy right here.
That's your hot wire now.
My stop switch.
Right here.
Okay, from there I've got to go over to my start.
It's all the way to the start.
So again, on the left-hand side of my start, I've got to have a wire, and it's got to be in parallel with this other start B.
So that stop goes through,
the
hot wire goes through.
And the last thing I need to do is I need to pick up the wire that goes over to the holding contact. Okay, so I can pick up this point right here, I can pick up this point right here, or I can pick up this point right here. They're all the same piece of wire going over to my normally open contact. Well, I have 2 wires here. I have 1 wire over here, and it looks like it's going to be a shorter run from this stop switch right here, right? And that's the exact same piece of wire over to each of those components. So I'm going to pick up this guy right here and have it go and feed one side of my normally open contact. Okay, so from here, I'm going to go back to my starter, and I'm going to pick up this side. It doesn't leave much room for my coil. Let me just leave a little bit more room for my coil contact. There we go. So that picks up this guy right there, and I've picked up every portion of that wire. Excellent. Okay, from there, let's see, I've got a wire going from that other side of the normally open contact, and that guy can go over and it can feed my coil. So I can just do like a 6 or 8 inch jumper from here over to my coil, and then I've picked up this guy and this guy. Beautiful. Okay, from there I've also got to pick up the other side of my start switches. So I'm going to go from that contact over to my start here. Easy now. So let's see, I'm going to have this guy come up, come over, jump over, and pick up that same point. Looks good, and that picks up my start B. And then I need to parallel from there over to my start A. So I need a wire going from here, up, and over, and let's clean that up a touch. Looks good, and we'll pick this guy up right there. Beautiful. So now I've picked up each of these points as well. Nice. The other side of my coil, I now have to have in series with my overload. So I'm going to go from here over to the overload. Again, you can notice that on all my components, I'm coming in on the left and out on the right. From that overload, I then have to pick up my return, and my return I've used as line 2 because this guy is rated for, in this case, 208 volts. So I'm now going to come up, jumper across this guy, and pick up my line 2. So I have voltage coming from line 1, feeding this part of the circuit, and then my return is on line 2. Beautiful. Okay, once we've done that, we can throw on our wiring numbers if you'd like. So let's get rid of all these guys so we can clean this up. Okay, we said this was wire number 1. Our return was going to be number 2. Then that makes this guy 3. Every time we go through a component, we go up a number. All of these guys are wire number 4. Go through the components, we're at number 5. And then we said this jumper right here is number 6. Excellent. Okay, let's drop in our wire numbers on everything here. So the first wire that we have going from line 1 over to our stop, that is conductor number 1. Our return over to line 2 is wire number 2. Okay, then the jumper between our stops is wire number 3. Then all of these guys from the stop to each of the starts and over to the holding contact, those are all wire number 4. So we've got number 4. This guy right here is number 4. This is the same piece of wire, so that's wire number 4. And then coming over here to my contact, this guy is number 4 as well. Okay, on the other side we have wire number 5. So that picks up this side of the holding contact. Then the other sides of my starts. So I have 5 here, and I've got 5 here. So this wire terminal right here is number 5. So that every one of these wires is labeled number 5. Okay, looks good. Oh, I've also got to pick up the other side of the coil right here. So this side of the coil is 5. And then finally we have this jumper going from the motor contactor coil over to our overload. So this is wire number 6, and this is wire number 6. Beautiful. Okay, so let's count all our wires in the pipe here. It looks like right here, going from one stop-start station to the next, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 wires. Okay, and then let's see, we've got going from the starter over to the first start-stop station, we have 1, 2, 3 wires. These additional wires right here, right, those are corresponding to this, just making sure that we haven't missed a wire there. Looks good. And all these guys are within the actual starter. So anything basically from here over is part of the starter. So all of our starter wiring is encased in that final box. Excellent. Okay, so we've started with multiple stop-start stations. We were able to do a ladder diagram above. Then we did our wiring numbers on there. Then we slowly and methodically drew out our wiring diagram, threw on our wire numbers, and then kept track of how many wires we actually need to have in the pipe. Don't forget, you're probably going to have a bonding conductor in between each of these guys as well to keep everything, all of our steel containers and pipes and boxes all at the same potential. All right, guys, we'll stop there. What I'll do is I'll throw in an additional video at the tagged onto this one, and we'll throw this stop-start station over on the other side.
The process of controlling the water.
Okay, that was a simple but very neat drawing of motor control, 2 push buttons. It showed the diagram up at the top and then showed you how many wires you would need in the conduit and showed you how to go about numbering them. And it was different from 120 volt. They were using their 208 supply voltage to get their control voltage. A lot of times, depending on what you've got, what kind of motor starter, sometimes it'll have a control transformer in with it. And you use that control transformer. It'll be pre-wired, but it'll have terminals you can come off of for your control voltage. If you kill the starter disconnect, if it's a combination disconnect and starter, it'll all be pre-wired except for the wires you need to go out in the field to hook up the push buttons. So right now, we're going to have a little quiz to go with this. I've got one made up, and I'll send that to you later. I ain't figured out quite how we're going to go about that yet. But I may have another little video along with this one, but I thought that was pretty neat. All right. Well, y'all work safe, and that ought to do it for right now.